say bland, but it was more, spontaneous. These guys didn't have a script to read. They just went on and, they had to really promote their matches, heavily because, back then the guys some worked over 350 days a year, if you can believe that. There were no
Wow.
vacations. The Christmas shows, the holidays, Christmas and Thanksgiving were two of the biggest dates on the wrestling calendar, and these guys took no breaks. It was nonstop. Some guys wrestled twice, like on Saturdays or Sundays. They were wrestling two different locations the same day. So they had to do a lot of self promoting, interviews from one town to another. But I think back in like I said, back in the mid '70s, when guys like Ric Flair burst upon the scene, they sort of introduced a new kind of promo. They were very outlandish and really sort of precursors to what we see today, as far as interviews. Except these guys, it was off the cuff. I mean, they completely improvised, and Ric Flair was probably the greatest of all time. And, The Rock has certainly set a new standard for promos. It started getting actually a little more colorful. And then as we got into the 80s with the Four Horsemen and stables and valets and managers, it sort of reached a new level. And then, of course, with the advent of cable television and pay-per-views, Vince took over from there and the business completely changed.
On Twitter, he's at by Mike Mooneyham. Mike Mooneyham here on Clemson Sports Talk, looking back at his life in wrestling. And you mentioned Ric Flair's name. In 1975, Flair, his life changed and potentially could have been taken from him in a tragic plane crash. Do you remember that? You would have been pretty young then, but, was he big enough at that time that you were like, holy cow, what just happened?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was major news. Here was Ric Flair, who had just come into the Carolinas in '74. He was 2 years into the business, virtually green and a rookie. But he had this magnetic personality and a great wrestling ability. That almost killed wrestling in the Carolinas when that plane crash occurred, because also on the plane were Tim Woods, who was known as the Mask, Mr. Wrestling. You had Bob Ruggers, David Crockett, who was the son of the promoter, Jim Crockett Sr., and the brother of Jim Crockett Jr., who later took over. So it was a big blow to the territory. And, probably the biggest thing, Rick, amazingly, he survived and he broke his back, and they said he'd never wrestle again. But, within a year, he was back on top. But, one of my favorites of all time was Johnny Valentine. He was father of Greg Valentine, and Johnny Valentine was one of the greatest heels of all time in the wrestling business. He was also on that plane, and he was paralyzed and never wrestled again. But at that time, Valentine was one of the biggest names in the Carolinas. He had completely transformed this territory from what had been traditionally a tag team territory to a very strong singles territory. It was a big change in the wrestling here. And for his career to be cut short at a time when he was really, really on fire, it was such a tragedy, not only for pro wrestling, but for Johnny, because he was such a great star in the wrestling business. But yeah, I remember that vividly. And, I actually started writing for wrestling magazines back in the '60s. I was barely a teenager, and I was just so enthralled by the business. And I loved writing back then. Like I said before, I was a huge sports fan. I collected every sports magazine, baseball cards, football cards, and then I got hooked on wrestling. But I actually started writing for some national wrestling magazines. They obviously didn't know how old I was, but they knew I had a little writing flair back then. And, it was amazing. Here I am, maybe 12, 13, 14 years old, and I was covering shows. I had my own press cards, right? And I was going from Charlotte, North Carolina to Columbia to Savannah to Atlanta, Georgia to Orlando, Florida to Miami Beach, Florida. I was covering the whole southeastern wrestling circuit back then. So I got this amazing um, deal where I could actually learn about not only the not only the business but the guys behind the business. And of course, it was a very closed society back then, and not many people, not many outsiders were privy to some of the inner workings of the business. But I was kind of on the outside, and I earned the respect of some of the guys in the office who knew, I wasn't going to blab about wrestling. Maybe it's on the, not quite on the up and up. So, I was introduced at such an early age to these guys, and my fascination just grew as I got older in the business. And yeah, so I knew a lot of the guys back then. Some of my heroes later became some of my best friends in later years. So it was just a fascinating world, and it still is. So many years later now. I mean, I still have a passion for the business, although it's just not the same. I mean, it's not the same anymore, and I really miss those old days.
One of the things I really enjoy now is your newsletter, Ringside with Mike Mooneyham. I get it every week.
Uh,
It gives me a chance to peek back into some of my memories from yesteryear. But one of the things that's changed, especially from the larger promotions, what we would have known as the WCW, NWA, and WWE/WWF back in the day, is that
yeah,
they don't really play venues like the Armory in Anderson, South Carolina anymore. Those
yeah.
are reserved for smaller institutions. But I do love that you've got photos from some of those days of wrestling that come along in that newsletter every week.
Oh yeah, and anyone who's followed me for any length of time is they know that I love old school wrestling. That's my passion. I write much more about those old days than I do, what's happening on Raw or SmackDown next week. It and it still has a tremendous audience. There are a lot of old fans out there and a lot of new fans who just have, they have old souls and have followed that part of the business that enjoy reading that stuff. And to me, you can't replace those guys of yesteryear. I mean, we have the current stars of today, which are largely manufactured. They're given personalities and they're playing the role. But I mean, back then, those guys were. There was only one Ole Anderson. There was only one Wahoo McDaniel. Those guys are what I call true originals, and it's the guys that I still write about. Those memories are very. They will remain with us and with wrestling fans for generations to come. Those guys. I just did a piece on Blackjack Mulligan a few weeks ago, and I mean, there was only one Blackjack Mulligan. He passed away 4 years ago, but I mean, fans all over the Mid-Atlantic territory, they'll always remember Mulligan and the times he had with Ric Flair and the matches he had with Johnny Valentine and Wahoo McDaniel. Just the nostalgia, just so many good memories that people, they try to hold on to, and for good reason.
Well, and a lot of those memories have been brought back up to the forefront by a gentleman named Conrad Thompson, who hosts several wrestling podcasts, Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard, What Happened When with Tony Schiavone. Have you had a chance, Mike, at all to listen to any of those podcasts? And what are some of if you have, what are some of the good memories that you've gotten from that?
Well, no, I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. I mean, I'm still stay pretty busy, even though I've been retired for 4 years. I still write my own wrestling column every week, which just celebrated its 31st anniversary this past week. I don't get a chance, but I know Conrad, and yeah, Conrad and a few others in the business. They keep that old school torch burning, which is good. And in my book, it's certainly a great thing.
Well, and I look back on my time watching professional wrestling, whether it was making a trip up to Columbia to the township, or maybe even if the WWE ventured into Augusta, you could occasionally get over there. When it comes to territories, as you were growing up, when did those lines really start to, I guess, blur? And when did you start to feel like wrestling was getting out of the territorial nature and into sort of a more national demographic, I guess you'd say?
Well, like I said, with the advent of cable television and pay-per-view, you started seeing it go, it went out a little bit further, like with, Georgia Championship Wrestling on the Superstation, which was one of Ted Turner's really big things that got him known nationally, along with, the Atlanta Braves and the Andy Griffith Show. Those were staples on his Superstation. And Georgia Championship Wrestling, reached a national audience. It was on the Superstation. So you sort of had an expansion, from Georgia, the Carolinas, reached out into Ohio and beyond. And you started seeing it more on a national basis then, as opposed to the strict territorial system. But really, when Vince McMahon, when he went national with WWF back then, that's when it became, the territories were dying a slow and painful death, and you just realized at that point they were never coming back. Vince gobbled up one territory after another until it became the national promotion that we know today as WWE. And, of course, WCW followed suit, and then the territories were basically all but done.
Mike, I'm going to put you on hold. We got to hit a quick break here on the show that shakes the Southland. We'll come back again on Twitter. He's at Mike Mooneyham. He does a tremendous job covering professional wrestling for the Charleston Post and Courier and has done so for 30 years. Incredible, the job that he's done, not just for the Charleston area, but for wrestling fans around the state of South Carolina and beyond, really, because there are a lot of people out there that don't spend the time necessary to tell the stories of so many legendary wrestlers and really athletes. I mean, these guys, whether you know it's scripted or not, these are tremendous athletes, and what they do in the ring is often spectacular. We hit a break. We come back with Mike Mooneyham right after this.
Now, Columbia's most dependable traffic, sponsored by Pope Davis Tire and Automotive, home of the best tire prices in Columbia, guaranteed. Fox Sports Radio 1400 traffic.
Traffic tie-ups on a Monday include I-26 eastbound at the Peak exit. Also, an accident on Bookman at Two Notch and a tie-up on Congaree at Garner's Ferry. The 103.5 FM WVOC traffic tip line number is 343-1055.
This report is sponsored by Unbound.org. Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at Unbound.org.
Northern Tool and Equipment is here to help. Whether you're cleaning, building, fixing, cutting, mowing, or growing, Northern Tool has the right tool for the job. Our stores are open and cleaning around the clock. Contactless curbside pickup is available when you order on northerntool.com. That's northerntool.com. Remember, whether you're cleaning, building, fixing, cutting, mowing, or growing, Northern Tool has the right tool for the job. Northern Tool and Equipment. Quality tools for serious work. northerntool.com.
When a community grows, its hospital should grow too. And that's just what we're doing at Lexington Medical Center. We recently launched the largest hospital expansion project in South Carolina history. Our new 10-story patient tower will help us take better care of patients, including the tiniest infants who need special attention. It will also make room for the growing number of patients who need surgery and intensive care. At Lexington Medical Center, our mission to serve our community never wavers. We're here when you need us today, and we'll be there when you need us tomorrow.
Graduating is a huge step for the class of 2020, and while it may look a little different this year, it doesn't take away from everything you've accomplished. That's why iHeart Radio and State Farm teamed up for Commencement, a podcast to give you some neighborly wisdom from the biggest names in music, entertainment, and more to help you today and in the future. The Commencement podcast is brought to you by State Farm. Listen to iHeartRadio's new podcast, Commencement. Speeches are out now on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Alicia Kaufman Quinton. My daddy, Billy Kaufman, opened Kaufman's Meat Plant at our present location in 1955. My family still works hard every day to ensure fresh quality cuts of beef, pork, and poultry. How about a tasty T-bone, ribeye, or New York strip steak? But to order at Kaufman's Meat Place. Just look for the signs near the intersection of US 1 and I-20 in Lexington. Call us at 356-0076 to place your order. Kaufman's Meat Place, when you want the very best your money can buy.
You don't usually get a stock tip from a 16-year-old, but I'm here to tell you about a different kind of stock. It's called Better Futures, a stock for social change that's not about making money. Instead, you invest to help students like me go to college. This is beyond a simple donation. It's the opportunity for America to invest in its kids and take an active stake in the future of the country. The return on your investment isn't money. What you get back is knowing you protected our potential. So one day, that potential can grow up to become surgeons and architects, executives and engineers, people who can change the future just by being a part of it. My name is Alicia, and I am your dividend.
Invest in better futures with UNCF. Visit uncf.org/invest. A mind is a terrible thing to waste, but a wonderful thing to invest in. A public service announcement brought to you by UNCF and the Ad Council.
Families affected by disasters urgently need support. Help the American Red Cross provide meals and shelter to those affected by disasters, big and small. Donate to Red Cross Disaster Relief. Go to redcross.org or call 1-800-RED-CROSS.
You're listening to Clemson Sports Talk with my dad, Lawton Swan, on Fox Sports Radio 1400 and on the iHeart Radio app.
Back at it on a Monday afternoon, Lawton Swan, Mike Mooneyham on the guest line. So, Mike, from the standpoint of fans in wrestling and your writing and covering it, did you often have to deal with, quote unquote, I guess, converting people over to recognizing that even though this may have been scripted, it was still an impressive sport to follow?
Well, when Vince took over, he pretty much it really wasn't that he let the cat out of the bag. I mean, most people knew that the matches were, even though they were tremendous athletes inside the ring, the matches were pretty much, predetermined who was going to win and who was going to lose. And a lot of people really feared that when Vince made that revelation that it would hurt the wrestling business. But by then, everyone pretty much knew what the deal was, and it actually the audience increased. It became more popular on a mainstream basis. So I don't know how much that affected how people felt about wrestling. I don't think it was. A lot of the old school purists were angered by Vince McMahon and what he was doing to professional wrestling. But in the long run, I mean, they pretty much maintained their audience, and it didn't do as much damage as had been expected.
Mike, on that front, from damage that's done to guys, is there a professional wrestler in your memory that you say, you know what, a heel turn here or maybe being a babyface there might have really changed the complexion of their time in wrestling, and maybe somebody who would have been a bigger name had something just kind of switched in their storyline?
Well, a lot of people have pointed to the fact that Ricky Steamboat never turned heel. I think there were some really pushing him to, I mean, it would have been a really big deal in the wrestling business back then. Had someone like Ricky Steamboat turned heel. He was one of the most popular baby faces of all time. Looking back on it personally myself, I'm glad he didn't, because I think he retained his image as, the ultimate baby face in pro wrestling, the ultimate good guy. And now, over the years, we get to the point where people turn on a dime. I mean, every few weeks for a while. And that's what I hate about it. I mean, how can you turn? You can only turn someone so many times before it becomes totally ineffective. And that's what's happened in the recent generation of professional wrestling. The guy's a good guy 1 week, and then 2 months later they turn him, and then 2 months after that they turn him back and forth. It just loses its effect. And I think they've hurt a lot of wrestlers, a lot of their careers by doing that so many times.
And it probably speaks volumes about guys like the Four Horsemen, who were, yes, heels, but for some people were really beloved. So they kind of teetered on this line of never really having to flip, who they were, but people just pulled for them or hated them one way or the other. There's brilliance in those characters.
Yeah, exactly. That's the magic formula. You can't force fans to accept or reject a certain wrestler. It has to happen organically. And with guys you mentioned, like the Four Horsemen, they were certainly heels, but they were so daggum cool that fans started to love them. They loved their interviews. They loved how they worked inside the ring. Same thing with Steve Austin. Steve Austin didn't have to tell fans that he was a bad guy. They knew he was a bad guy, but they knew he was tough. He was this anti-authoritarian rebel who shook the wrestling world and went up against the promoter and Vince McMahon. And organically, Steve Austin became the biggest selling wrestler in history. Even more recently with Becky Lynch, all of that happened organically. There was no script or no booking strategy to move Becky from mid-card to superstar main eventer, but it happened organically inside the ring. Things happen, and fans make that decision to cheer or boo any certain performer, and that's when it's most effective. But when the booking office tries to force feed a wrestler down the collective throats of fans, it most of the times it just doesn't work, and it backfires. We've seen a lot of cases. Roman Reigns, who had a rocket put on his back by the wrestling office, fans rebelled. They really never wanted him to be the man, and that should be a lesson learned. But apparently they're not. Some of the guys in the office are not picking up on that message.
One of those guys that I always wish would have gotten a little more run, a little more push, but there was something magical and unique about the Great Muta. What were your memories of his time in the ring? And I believe he may even still be wrestling a little bit here and there, but when he first kind of burst on the scene, what was it about Muta that made him so different?
Well, in the United States, it was totally the mystique. Here's this mysterious guy from Japan, and Japan has produced some of the greatest wrestlers in the history of the business, but very talented, had a great reputation over there. And when he came to this country, he was brought in originally as the son of the great Kabuki. Well, I'm sure a lot of old-time fans will recall that name. Had a great feud with Jimmy Valiant here in the Carolinas, pretty big name. But he came in billed as Kabuki's son, and just very mysterious, the aura surrounding him. And he was a great technical wrestler. And when he started spitting out that green mist, fans in here went crazy. And he had such terrific matches with Flair, Sting, and put his name on the wrestling map in the United States immediately. So there was always it was sort of a stereotypical thing, especially years ago, where guys from Japan and Germany and they were all bad guys. They portrayed the old elements of society, dating back to World War II. So they were hated heels, and Muta fit that mold, with the exception that he was so technically good in the ring.
Tell you what, let's press pause on the Great Muta and hit a quick break. We'll come back with more on that front right after this.
Long Swan here. And I know in sports we're always talking about the big guy. Well, let me tell you, when you're buying a car, you don't need that. What you need to do is head down to Orangeburg to my good friends at Ferry Chevrolet Cadillac. 4 generations of family-owned business right there at Ferry Chevrolet. No dock fees, no tricks, straightforward pricing in a low-pressure environment you'll love. Check them out online, ferrychevrolet.com, or call them 803-536-1600. It's Ferry Chevrolet Cadillac, just a short 30-minute drive off of exit 145A in Orangeburg.
For the past 2 months, our homes have been, well, lived in more than ever before. Restore your home back to its original glory with the help of Zero Res Carpet and Air Duct Cleaning. Right now, get 3 rooms of carpet clean for only $119 and a complimentary cleaning and disinfecting of common touch surfaces. Visit ZeroResColumbia.com.
When you get in your car, you need the best directions to get where you want to be.
Will arrive at your retirement in 8 years.
The same is true for your retirement. You need a voice to guide you along the way. Join Pat Struby for Save Your Retirement with Pat Struby. Pat's 18 years of experience can help make your retirement journey feel like a drive down easy street.
Arriving at your retirement.
Saturdays, 6 a.m. on Fox Sports Radio, and Saturdays at noon and Sundays at 9 on 560 WVOC for Save Your Retirement with Pat Struby.
Live from the $1,500 instant rebate AAA Heating and Air Weather Center.
Thunderstorms tonight, about an 80% chance, low in the upper 60s. Tomorrow, expect rain, high in the low 80s. In the 103.5 FM WVOC Weather Center, I'm Rob Sanders.
This report is sponsored by the T.J. Martell Foundation. Join the T.J. Martell Foundation in the fight against leukemia, cancer, and AIDS. Your support helps facilitate cutting-edge research that will lead to more effective treatments and save more lives. Visit tjmartell.org to learn about music's promise for a cure.
You wanted to see me?
Yes, please, have a seat. So here's the thing. When this company brought you on, we took a chance on you. You didn't have that 4-year college degree we typically look for.
Right.
But we gave you a shot anyway. And since then, you've worked incredibly hard and given it your all.
Thanks.
You've been an important asset to the team, but I don't think you can be an intern here anymore. We want to hire you.
You're serious?
Absolutely.
Find your next great employee. Introduce yourself to the grads of life. Who are they? Talent worth knowing about. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
I won't let you down.
I know.
Don't miss out on a resource many innovative companies have already discovered. Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
You don't usually get a stock tip from a 16-year-old, but I'm here to tell you about a different kind of stock. It's called Better Futures, a stock for social change that's not about making money. Instead, you invest to help students like me go to college. This is beyond a simple donation. It's the opportunity for America to invest in its kids and take an active stake in the future of the country. The return on your investment isn't money. What you get back is knowing you protected our potential. So one day, that potential can grow up to become surgeons and architects, executives and engineers, people who can change the future just by being a part of it. My name is Alicia, and I'm your dividend.
Invest in better futures with UNCF. Visit uncf.org/invest. A mind is a terrible thing to waste, but a wonderful thing to invest in. A public service announcement brought to you by UNCF and the Ad Council.
Fox Sports Radio 1400. Serving Columbia at 1400. And the world on the iHeart Radio app.
It is Clemson Sports Talk on a Monday. Lawton Swan hanging out with you. Mike Mooneyham, our guest here on the show, taking a look back at what was going to be his life in sports. But really, I mean, he's a guy whose life in sports has been surrounded by wrestling and wrestling stories. And so, Mike, we were talking about Great Muta being one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. When did his character sort of, I guess, change or morph in your opinion?
When they hooked him up with Gary Hart as a mouthpiece, as his manager, that made him more dastardly in the eyes of wrestling fans. But just a great performer who still occasionally wrestles.
Yeah, something about just the way he moved, the way he, there's an added oomph. I don't know another word for it when you move with sharp edges and you don't do things that look normal. And I mean, anytime he hit somebody in the corner off of the moonsault and then just a little, backsplash, it just looked different than anybody else doing it.
Yeah, well, like I said, a lot of that technique was, was right out of Japan. He had these cat-like movements, and he moved very fluidly in the ring, and every move meant something, and that's part of wrestling. It's sort of storytelling in the ring. You're painting a picture inside a squared circle, and Muta was absolutely one of the best at doing that.
Final question for you, Mike, and again, we appreciate you hanging out with us for an extended interview, and we got to do this again. What are your thoughts on the future of wrestling from Ring of Honor and AEW and everybody that's kind of coming along? What do you think things will look like in the next 10 years in the wrestling business?
Well, we're certainly in uncharted territory here with the no audience shows. I got to tell you, Lawton, I really have a hard time watching it.
Yeah.
Fans, wrestling was meant to be a spectator sport. Fans play off of wrestlers and wrestlers play off of fans. It's got to work both ways. And right now it's for me personally, I hate to say this, but it's very difficult to watch. I'm hoping that sooner or later, the fans come back, the arenas open up, and wrestling gets back on track. But it's going to be tough. I feel like the product has been hurt, and this goes for WWE and AEW, which also plays in front of an empty arena. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult to recondition the fans to go back to how it was. So it's a big question mark for me. I've got confidence in the business that it will come back at some point. Wrestling has always gone, had their valleys and plateaus and ups and downs over the years. This may be a tough one to navigate. So I've got my fingers crossed. And really, being an old school guy, I had a long conversation with a friend of mine just last night about this. It's, to me, I still think wrestling is what's on the marquee. And I've seen a little transformation from actual wrestling to more of a cinematic presentation. If you watch WrestleMania this past year, you saw sort of a movie. It was like a movie scene with Undertaker against AJ Styles. The Bray Wyatt thing was very, very strange. This is it. And I'll end it on this note. I still want some suspension of disbelief. And if I don't have any suspension of disbelief, it's not what I was hooked on. It's not the business that I love. It's just not what I expect out of professional wrestling.
Mike, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much again. Mike Mooneyham, the Charleston Post and Courier, on Twitter @by Mike Mooneyham. Mike, man, take care, buddy. Thank you.
Thanks, Lawton.
Awesome opportunity to talk with Mike and to spend some time with him, recollecting his walk down memory lane when it comes to wrestling. And I think that he's right about fans, and we could certainly talk about this. We got William Qualkenbush coming up in hour number 2. Even this weekend, whether it was golf, whether it was NASCAR, I said this a week ago, I hold firm. Fans are as important to sports, you could argue, as the teams that are involved. You put two great teams in a venue with no fans, and the interest level, from my perspective, dwindles. You could put two of the worst teams in a sport in a venue with fans, and my interest level is increased. So much so that I could imagine watching those non-great teams with fans giving me ambiance and energy and excitement versus the soccer I watched this weekend that was, I guess the terminology is, and maybe it's fitting in the midst of a pandemic, sanitized. It was like a glorified scrimmage. You could hear not the conversations on the field, but that was really the only talk. As a matter of fact, there was a moment in one of those soccer matches I watched this weekend where I said to my son, I wonder what's going to sound like when somebody scores. And literally, as soon as I got that out of my mouth, somebody did score, and it wasn't very exciting. Fans are a huge part of this. And for years, the fans have been taken to the cleaners in terms of pricing. My hope is that the ownership in these, whether it's franchises or universities or whatever, my hope is there will be a recognition. And I've tried to come up with ways for years to fill the stadium. From, in the waning moments, 15 minutes into the game or after a quarter or whatever, selling very inexpensive additional tickets to fill up the remaining seats. And in a digital era, it's hard to imagine that you couldn't figure out a way to do that and make it work. 803-450-0086. That's your number, 803-450-0086. We've got some disappointing news out of the upstate as one local college takes a big hit to the athletic department involving their baseball program. We'll tell you who next.
Hello, this is Keith Gramad with Chapin Furniture. With 4 kids, 2 dogs, a cat, and 10 baby chickens, the last couple of months at the Gramad house has been pretty interesting. Wouldn't you agree, Jen?
The words stir crazy bring new meaning to life, and I'm sure many of you can relate, but honestly, we feel blessed to have a family that gets along and enjoys each other's company.
If all this time at home has you reevaluating the comfort of your inside living space, we have some great news for you. Chapin Furniture is open for business and just in time for our huge Memorial Day sale.
Save on everything in the store. Serta, Beauty Rest, and Tempur-Pedic mattresses at great prices, handmade furniture from the American Craftsman at Bassett, and a great selection of rugs and home decor, all on sale right now.
Chapin Furniture's Memorial Day sale through Monday, May 25th. Chat with a designer online at chapinfurniture.com or come to Exit 91 in Chapin and look for the big red chair.
Paid non-attorney spokesperson. Attention all women who have been diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Johnson & Johnson's baby powder and shower-to-shower talcum products have been linked to ovarian cancer. In February and May 2016, Johnson & Johnson was ordered to pay $72 million and $55 million by 2 juries to 2 women who contracted ovarian cancer after years of using talcum baby powder products. If you or a family member has been diagnosed with ovarian cancer and used talcum powder prior to the diagnosis, call Talcum Powder Help Now today at 800-833-0112. You may be entitled to substantial compensation. The consultation is free and you'll pay nothing unless there is a recovery in your favor. Don't fight this alone. If you or a loved one used talcum baby powder-based products before being diagnosed or died from ovarian cancer, call Talcum Powder Help Now at 800-833-0112. 800-833-0112. 800-833-0112.
Paid for by Bar Justice. Every home has have-to-dos and probably some want-to-dos. The Home Depot can help you do both with the things you need to make things work a little better or take care of something you've been meaning to do. Maybe do something to start summer. We have the low prices to make it all doable. Order online and get free delivery on orders over $45. Whatever you need to do or want to do, we can help you get it done. The Home Depot. How doers get more done. Some delivery exclusions apply.
Hey, class of 2020. We know things have been kind of out of the ordinary lately. You're not going to get a graduation ceremony. So iHeartRadio found some people to write commencement speeches just for you. John Legend, he's in. Hillary Clinton, she's in too. Over 20 of your favorites, from DJ Khaled to Coach K, Abby Wambach to Halsey. Listen to iHeartRadio's new podcast, Commencement, out now on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Sharing has never meant as much as it does now. We share the things we love most in life for the world to see. But what if we could actually do more with our sharing than just collect likes? What if this sharing could be used to make a difference? Now there's a place where we can put all that sharing to good use. The National MS Society is asking people to make a difference and share what they love with someone else who loves it too. Whether it's surfing, dancing, or whatever is important to you, we've created a place that'll help you get your experience out to the world. If you have a story, share it. If you have a solution, share that too. Join us at wearestrongerthanms.org, because together, we are stronger.
Fox Sports Radio 1400. Online at foxsportsradio1400.com. On your phone with the iHeart Radio app and on hundreds of devices like Alexa, Google Home, Xbox, and Sonos. An iHeart Radio station.
Well, I honestly don't know if you were in your car or not. I am certainly in my house, and I appreciate you being a part of the program every day here on Clemson Sports Talk, and looking forward to getting back to some semblance of normalcy in sports and getting fans in attendance. But we've had a major casualty here in the state of South Carolina, as just moments ago, just right as we were getting set to go on the air, Kendall Rogers at D1Baseball.com tweeted that Furman Baseball has been informed that the baseball program is being cut, according to sources telling D1 Baseball that Furman was a member of the SoCon and finished the 2019 campaign with 13 conference wins. Kendall Rogers calling it just a sad day for baseball in the state of South Carolina. Yeah, and this is one of those things that I'm afraid is, I'm not going to say is going to be the norm across the board in sports, but I do believe we're going to see more and more of this, especially most likely I would say it's smaller programs. The baseball program and the men's lacrosse program have reportedly been eliminated. I know one of my niece's good friends from high school was a pitcher over at Furman, so I don't know what will happen with those guys. We've talked about the circumstances around other college baseball programs and how the universities are going to handle these things moving forward with scholarships and et cetera. But this is not an ideal circumstance for the Southern Conference, not an ideal circumstance for Furman. I saw people out on social media saying, hey, this is where Furman Paladin fans, Furman Paladin supporters need to pull together for this program to help them out. There are other programs. Bowling Green announced its program was not going to be playing. I don't know what the circumstances are for the future. Is this a forever cut? Is this just a couple of years cut? I don't believe that it is something that we should absolutely think means forever. But for some programs, it may be a while before they bounce back. And for others, honestly, it's a bottom line deal. And they may ultimately decide that, just given the numbers game, other schools may say, you know what, this sport's really not worth it for us anyway. We're not benefiting enough from what it cost us. And one thing that's happened certainly in the midst of this COVID-19 situation is that these are looked at more along the terms of businesses than universities with luxury add-ons and great opportunities for students to come and be a part of the baseball program at Furman. When things are cooking and running along great, you can have luxuries in your life that you don't really need. You really don't need it. Furman University probably doesn't really need baseball. They have it. This goes back to needs and wants. And I think that what we're finding is that things that maybe when money's flowing, people feel like they they really need it, really turns out it was really just something they wanted. And they really don't need it. And they'll be fine without it. And that's a sad part of this. And I don't think this is the end. My hope is that Furman will be back. But you never know. They may evaluate it, the bottom line, and go, you know what? It's not for us. This is going to affect coaches. This is going to affect players. This affects fans and families. And I think ultimately, whether we're talking about stands with fans in them or not, what do you do? And what do you do if it comes down to cutting programs versus coaches' salaries or eliminating some of the personnel that go along with some of these staffs? I mean, let's be honest. I don't know what the total bill on Clemson's salary is in football. But if all things were equal, if every program had to trim it back to 5 guys coaching, if you had to do that across the board to save money across the board, could you pull it off? Probably so. Now, obviously, there's other staff members, etc. But, I mean, there were a day and age where I'm assuming the one guy ran the whole show. I don't know that all the great coaches throughout history of football had offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators. You might say, Swanee, yeah, but the times are different. Well, so are the times now. And I'm not advocating for 5-man coaching staffs, but they just added an additional coaching spot on the football staffs, a year ago, 2 years ago? They went from 9 coaches to 10. You couldn't get this done with 7? And that's the thing that I think is scary. Because while we are getting better news on the front of moving forward with trying to get some sports out there, it's not with fans in attendance. And fans in attendance are a large part of the money. Now, the television money's huge too, and the TV audiences have been good because nobody has anything else to do. But at some point, you got to fish or cut bait on a lot of things. And I don't think without fans in attendance, viewership is going to continue to be high because of that sanitized feeling. I think people go, this is not great. I'd rather watch old stuff with fans than new. Matter of fact, going back to what we were talking about with Mike Mooneyham. Instead of wrestling with empty venues, dude, give me replays of old WrestleMania with Hogan and Andre, WrestleMania 3, and have Hogan breaking it down for me. Telling me what's going on. What's going through his mind at this exact moment. Put him in the little box at the bottom and have Hulk Hogan break down that match. That's more entertaining to do that than to give me a sanitized, no-fan version of your sport. That, to me, I'd much prefer to watch Clemson play old games right now with Dabo Swinney talking over them than nothing. Or even football, maybe with empty stands. Honestly, it just doesn't have the same punch. Hour 2, William Qualkenbush joins us. Stay with us.
Home for sports. Fox Sports Radio 1400. Now, Columbia's most dependable traffic, sponsored by Pope Davis Tire and Automotive, home of the best tire prices in Columbia, guaranteed. Fox Sports Radio 1400 traffic.
Traffic tie-ups on a Monday include I-26 eastbound at the Peak exit. Also, an accident on Bookman at Two Notch and a tie-up on Congaree at Garner's Ferry. The 103.5 FM WVOC traffic tip line number is 343-1055.
This report is sponsored by the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has been at the forefront of inflammatory bowel disease research and care for over 50 years. Learn more about research, education, and support at Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.
Kirk Commercial Construction is a licensed general contractor in South Carolina. Since 2011, Chris Kirk, a Columbia native with 20 years of construction experience, has believed in meeting his customers' needs. Kirk Commercial Construction is capable of performing any retail or office expansion, new construction, metal building, or commercial renovation work. In addition to Kirk's commercial construction projects, their service division can assist you with commercial and maintenance tasks. If you need it done right, call 803-250-2495 or kirkcommercialconstruction.com.
Hey golfers, have you been to the golf capital of the world yet? Myrtle Beach Golf offers a variety of custom packages featuring nearly 80 courses. Golfers have the option to create the exact experience they're looking for. Plus, Myrtle Beach Golf provides top-notch accommodations with over 15 resorts, all guaranteed to be a hole-in-one. Come join us for a short drive away in Myrtle Beach for your best golf trip by par. Book now at myrtlebeachgolf.com.
To help protect others from COVID-19, DHEC encourages everyone to wear a mask or cloth face covering when in public. Remember to clean your hands before and after putting on your mask. Make sure your mask covers your nose and mouth, and you can breathe through it. Don't use a mask on children under the age of 2. Try not to touch the mask or your face while wearing it. And don't use surgical masks needed by healthcare workers. Help stop the spread. Visit scdhec.gov/COVID-19.
Hey guys, Lawton Swan here. I was hanging out in the backyard with my son Mason a couple of years ago, and he said, "Dad, you're the best father ever." When I asked him why, he said, "Because when I go outside to play, I don't get eaten up by the bugs anymore." Imagine that, me a hero, when all I did was call my good buddy Trey Powell at Mosquito Joe. With their routine service plan, no more bugs and no more bites. Make yourself the family hero. Call Mosquito Joe today, 803-223-7916. That's 803-223-7916. Outside is fun again.
They'll challenge your authority. They'll try to break your will. They'll push you to the edge of your sanity. Because that's what kids do. But this car is your territory, not theirs. Defend it. Who makes the payments? Who cleans it? Who drives it? You do. That's who. And in here, your word is law. So when you say you won't move until everyone's buckled up, you won't budge an inch. Until you hear that click. Never give up until they buckle up. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. For more information, visit safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup.
Mothers Against Drunk Driving supports victims of drunk driving, drug driving, and underage drinking at no charge. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org. That's MADD.org.
Fox Sports Radio 1400, WCOS Columbia, an iHeart radio station.
It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set! Just call me Swanee.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
It is hour number 2. That's drop time right here on the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk. Lawton Swan hanging out with you on a Monday. William Qualkenbush going to be joining the show here momentarily. And again, over the weekend, NASCAR got back after it. I mentioned that earlier today. And of course, Kevin Harvick came away with a victory in Darlington. And for me, it was sanitized. It was not the same without fans. This concerns me a lot because it's not a sport that I feel like really relies on fans, much like basketball, baseball, and other sports. William Qualkenbush is on Twitter at QualkTalk. Qualk, am I wrong? A sport that I really don't think needs fans was not very fun to watch yesterday, even in a world without sports, because there weren't fans in attendance.
I didn't feel that. I actually felt like it was a pretty good integration of sports. And while you're saying, the obviously the atmosphere is much better with fans, I actually thought NASCAR, from a minute to minute, or if you want to use a sports analogy, play to play, from that standpoint, I think it actually, as loud as it is and as constant as it is, you feel like you don't really get that, you don't get that like almost moment to moment interaction with the fans while the thing's going on.
Right.
Whereas like the more I watch, The Last Dance, or you watch any kind of old sporting events or anything like that, it's pretty clear that part of the greatness of these games and the greatness of these moments and the greatness of these teams is the knockdown, drag-out struggle between one team and another, and that one team is buoyed by their crowd while the other team's fighting against it. I felt like because of the way NASCAR operates, you don't really have that. Like, there's a little bit of rooting against. Like, I'm sure there weren't a lot of, I'm sure there wouldn't be a lot of broken hearts in the crowd when, I think one of Kyle Busch that got pushed to the back, failed 2 pre-race inspections yesterday, and so he gets pushed to the back. I'm sure there'd be some boo-bers and things like that were missed. But I mean, I felt like they did a pretty good job with it, all things considered, and it made me a little bit more positive about this interim period where we're kind of a little bit scared to put fans back in the stadiums. I think it'll happen sooner rather than later, and we'll try to see how far we can push the envelope. But at least for a little bit, I think some sports can do okay.
William Qualkenbush on Clemson Sports Talk. We've heard now that the Governor Cuomo in New York says they're working on preparations to be able to have sports without fans. I watched some European soccer without fans. It felt like a scrimmage to a degree. It felt like a spring game maybe with nobody in attendance. It's going to be strange, I think, adjusting to that. But if I can adjust, and maybe it's more about me than the sport, maybe I'll enjoy it. But did you watch anything else this weekend, and what were your takeaways from those other sports that were live this weekend?
I watched the charity golf match yesterday. Rory McIlroy and Dustin Johnson against Matthew Wolff and Ricky Fowler, raised money and all that stuff. And there was basically nobody on the course. It's weird to get announcers. It's weird to have announcers off site calling games. Like, obviously you got, you're calling a Masters, somebody's in Butler Cabin, right? Or somebody's back up there at 18 and you're calling all over the course. But there are people right there as well. And so with the distance, you could certainly tell, even in that, that the distance played a factor. I'm sympathetic to these governors and the tough choices that they're making. It is really interesting that literally a week and a half ago, you had governors being like, no way. I mean, we're not opening up for months. We're not going to be having sporting events for a week. We're not even going to have it into the fall. And then all it took was just, and again, I'm not saying we should mount an insurrection and go and do whatever we want, but I'm saying all it took was a few people to be like, yeah, some of these laws are kind of draconian. Like, this is not sustainable. And then all of a sudden you got, Andrew Cuomo and Gavin Newsom, who have been among the most restrictive governors in the country. Gavin Newsom today is like, oh yeah, we'll start pro sports back at the start of June. And it's, and they were saying there won't be, people in stadiums until September. Now, are we going to go 3 whole months of having pro sports and venues with no fans? I would say if that's true, if we're going 3 months without any fans in any venue, particularly a place like L.A. where you've got 2 teams, say like California, you got 2 L.A. teams, you got a San Francisco baseball team, and the San Diego Padres, that's 4 teams playing almost every day. Are we really going to go all that time without fans? I feel like that would be bad for the country. That would just mean bad stuff for the country. So I'm encouraged that the signs continue to be positive as states continue to be opened up, and I'm also encouraged that some governors, rather than maybe playing the partisan politics and maybe maybe hunkering down so that you don't get the negative consequences of opening up, quote unquote, too soon, whatever that means, they're actually accepting the reality now that the American public and people in these states can social distance. We can do some of these things to reintegrate without everybody in government holding our hands or acting like we're not capable. So that is a very positive sign, not just for, those particular states and their local economies and for us as sports fans, but I think as we get closer and closer to football season, it's better for the decision makers who have these long-term plans out, because if people are making these types of decisions in the short term for June, July, then certainly making projections towards September, you can start becoming a little more positive about what the trajectory might be at that point.
Well, and I think the other thing too is I think what they recognize is if things don't go well over the next couple of weeks, and again, I kind of been harping on this for a while now that states are beginning to open back up, you can always shut back down. And you'll take some heat for the fact that you opened up, but you allowed people to test the water, so to speak, to see how things would go. And I think that's okay. If you want to be a part of the variable by being somebody that goes out and eats at restaurants and does those types of things, you're allowed to do that now. And that's really going to help us more so probably knowing a little bit more about this virus than anything else.
Exactly right. And look, I'm never going to apologize for being optimistic. I try to be, logical, particularly when I'm on air. I want to be responsible. I know you feel the same way. You want to be responsible with information. You don't want to give people false senses of security or hope or things like that. But that's why I was never fully on board with the Kirk Herbstreit. I don't see how we're going to play any games. Well, yeah, like if nothing changes, if we literally just sit here on our hands and twiddle our thumbs for 5 months, we're not going to have any games in the fall. But, I mean, in the United States of America, we kind of have a way of doing things. Like, we kind of figure out problems. We figure out what to do. And so I just made some basic assumptions about the way when we decide we have a common enemy, we have a common foe, we have a common cause and purpose, and we put the full force of the American economy, what parts of it we can put forth towards solving a problem, we're going to solve the problem. And it's also, I know the news just came out about, Furman's dropping baseball and men's lacrosse, and that's very, very sad and heartbreaking. And there are going to be programs that make those tough decisions. Think about the assumptions that people were making about, well, we're just not going to have games. I mean, that's like showing up at a board meeting in a school and being like, well, we'll just shut the doors. Nobody is going to just willingly roll over and do that. They're going to try to have games. These sports franchises are going to try to have games. I'm sure there's probably been some pressure put on these governors because these leagues are saying, look, we're already losing billions in revenue. We got to at least put some games on TV. You got to help us here because we're going to help your economy get back on track. We're going to help your tax base. We're going to help you get revenue to your state, to your locality, to the nation. We got to get this thing back going. And so it's everybody looking each other in the face and saying, yeah, it's really important, not just for things like the psyche of the nation or the good of our, entertainment mindedness or, it's good because we're bored or anything. No, it's an actual economic driver for the nation. It's a way to employ people and get people back to work and these types of things. And so it's good for all of those circumstances. And I think people are starting to see the light that this is not something that we heard 2 months ago as, oh, we can do without, these sentences, we can do without sports for a while. It's just, it's just a hobby. It's not a big deal. It's not that important, blah, blah, blah. I think we're starting to understand how silly those ideas were because it is very important to the vibrancy and the feel of normalcy and to the economic success of our nation as it's currently formulated.
On Twitter, he's at Qualt Talk. Qualt, is it fair to say that things like what we've seen with Bowling Green, what we've now seen with Furman with the cancellation of their baseball program, that when times are great and finances are good, you might have a package to get your car washed every month. That package might cost you $30 or whatever. Is that what baseball and some of these sports are, though, for these programs? They can be cut because they really don't make money for these schools. And this is a time where they're expendable sports, unfortunately.
Yes, I mean these are legitimate conversations being had. Now, what I would say is that for a school like Furman, I mean, if we want to go into it, we can. I mean, they've been asking for this for a long time because of some decisions that they made in terms of the way that they prioritize. And I'm not saying this in a way that's fully negative, although there's a negative connotation certainly to what I'm about to say, but they have really gone heavily toward academics and away from athletics in the way that they've set up shop, the way that they prioritize things. And so, you know what, when you make those types of sacrifices, maybe there's not the tie to the university for donors. Maybe you have a hard time raising money inside your sports. You haven't put forth a ton of capital. You haven't tried to raise that type of money that you would need to be successful. And then now the money that you did have that was coming from other programs, well, that program may not even have money. with the football program at that level. So it's drying up immediately, and you can't just run programs on debt for multiple years when they were already in the red to begin with. So these are the types of situations that aren't just, these conversations aren't going to be having now, and then once we start playing, they'll be done. Much like the rest of the economy, when people come back to work and, the government loans run out and things like that, there's going to be more carnage that comes after a year of this, I believe, where people say, okay, we can see, in the next year, we can see what happens here, but this is not sustainable long term. I also think there are some places with some, let's say, some inconvenient problems. I'm not saying that Furman or Bowling Green or Chicago State, I think, is talking about it right now, where they're not, I'm not saying they want to do this, throughout time. I'm not saying they wanted to do this for years. But I do think it's interesting that this is a point where Major League Baseball is trying out some rule proposals that, shocker, they've been trying to figure out how to implement for years. Well, now it doesn't matter what the games look like. People just want games, and they understand that, so they're going to try to experiment with some of these things that maybe couldn't get passed before. And so if you're thinking, man, I wanted to cut that sport, or I want to cut that program, or I want to cut ties with that coach, or I wanted to reorganize this way or restructure this way, this is a good time to do it, because you could essentially get carte blanche to do that if it saves money right now, because that's the only thing that people are going to care about. At the Clemson level, the major D1 level, the Power 5 level, the effects of that are going to be more negligible because of TV revenue that's going to continue to come in. What's not going to be good is if, right now TV revenue obviously not as high in the mid-major and low-major level, and if football schedules or scheduling generally for football, men's basketball, baseball, those types of things, if it's disrupted in any way over the 2020-21 athletic year, then a lot of programs who rely on that income, taking road games, those pay games, and basketball and football and baseball that we know exist, those programs may have a really hard time. And so I don't think that Furman is one of a handful of programs that's going to do this. I think there are going to be numerous stories across the country before this is all said and done where people are figuring out what it means when the athletic revenue generator all of a sudden shuts down and people just can't pay bills, and then hard decisions have to be made.
Yeah, it is a tough time for everybody. Obviously, William Qualkenbush on Twitter at Qualk Talk. And, Qualk, one of the things that we were talking about a little bit earlier, we had Mike Mooneyham from the Charleston Post and Courier, and I don't know if you followed his 30-plus year career in writing, but one of the things, well, nearly 40 now, I guess, but one of the things that he's been so passionate about it is wrestling. And so I'll ask you, we've talked about your life in sports to a degree, but professional wrestling, shifting gears, is that something that, a young William Qualkenbush would have had his eyeballs on?
I didn't watch it a lot. I think when I was growing up, like elementary school, a lot of my friends, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Undertaker, The Rock, that was common in my elementary school, that kids would wear like T-shirts and stuff like that. I was watching traditional sports. In our house we were watching baseball, basketball, football, watched a little hockey every now and then. There was a lot of ESPN and not a lot of other stuff. And then, my parents raised me in a little bit of a protective fashion too, so that it might have been a little aggressive for their taste. You know what I'm saying? Like watching Monday Night Raw and stuff like that. Like, it did get a little raw sometimes.
Yeah, right.
And so they weren't exactly, pushing me and encouraging me in that way. But I was exposed to it, and I remember my elementary school, we were expected to take sides. Third, fourth, fifth grade, we were expected to take sides. I don't even know who I ended up supporting. It might have just, I might have been a typical politician, whoever I was with that day. Whoever was talking about it, I might have just decided I was with them. But it did become a thing, and I remember wearing the stuff, wearing the apparel. It was a big deal when I was growing up, for sure, in the 90s. And you know what? Watching Dennis Rodman, I don't know if you've seen it, Swanee, I don't want to spoil it for you, but watching Dennis Rodman with the NWO last night,
right,
during the NBA Finals in '98, it did bring back a few memories. The WCW, NWO, that whole situation. That, I don't know if it was the height of wrestling, but it certainly was more popular then than it is now. And you had household names that were being formed at that time, so it brought back a few memories for me there as well.
Yeah, crossing over those lines into sports, and really some of that went back to. I believe it was WrestleMania 2, and they had a a battle royale, if you will, and former Clemson defensive lineman William the Refrigerator Perry was one of the entrants in that back in, I guess, around 1985, 1986.
Yeah, you know what? I'd forgotten about that the fridge was in there. I'm glad you brought that up. But it was like, it is interesting. Honestly, it was interesting to be like in 2020. I mean, seriously, in 2020,
yeah,
it is ridiculous to think that Dennis Rodman legitimately skipped practice, like between NBA Finals games, skipped practice to fly to Auburn Hills to appear with Hulk Hogan. And just, I mean, he just like straight up chose it over pro wrestling. But the reality is the fine that he got for missing practice was significantly dwarfed by the amount that he was paid. And it wasn't that big of a deal at the time because it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Because it was seen as a little more mainstream and it was seen as some crossover appeal between athletics and wrestling. So that does make a lot of sense. And it speaks to kind of the change in our culture, I think, that it's not seen quite that way anymore. And I think that's pretty interesting.
Qualk, my man, you know it's always good to catch up with you. I hope you and the family are well and look forward to talking to you next Monday. And hopefully by then we'll have a little bit more news and maybe better news about what sports in America is going to look like down the road.
We can only hope, Swanee. Be good, buddy. Hope to talk to you Monday.
William Qualkenbush here on the show that shakes the Southland. And again, it's always fantastic to catch up with him. I see my good friend Gavin Black's mom, Miss Valinda, hanging out watching the show. Miss Valinda, good to see you. Well, hear from you. And she says that she believes that me, Gavin, and Eddie enjoyed wrestling a lot. Boy, did we ever. Matter of fact, I was talking to my good buddy, Dr. Ed Moore, the other day about some old school wrestling and some venues and events we went to back in the day. And, you know, that's one of the things I think that really is different for guys who are a little bit younger, like William Qualkenbush, guys who are my nephew's age, you know, in their late 20s and early 30s, is that the version of wrestling that they saw growing up. And again, we had a great interview with Mike Mooneyham in hour one. If you missed it, we dove into his history in wrestling, which dates back to the early 60s. But those kids grew up with a wrestling sport that really pushed the envelope in terms of what was done and said and the actions, things that you couldn't say and do at school, where when I was a kid, you know, the DDT was the move. And then all of a sudden you get to fast forward and the acronyms, I guess you call them, for the moves, you know, were bad words and things that you couldn't say. So it's one of those things where I think there was a generation, I don't want to call it the lost generation of wrestling, but there was a generation of wrestling fans that you couldn't watch it when you were 10 years old. You just couldn't, because of the sexuality, because of some of the vulgarity of some of the wrestling moves and the names of the holds. They just tried to push this envelope, this edge. And they didn't do that nearly as much, if at all, back when I was watching it, you know, in the mid to late 80s. 803-450-0086. That's the text line and the phone line. We had a break. We're back with more. Stay with us.
Now, Columbia's most dependable traffic, sponsored by Pope Davis Tire and Automotive, home of the best tire prices in Columbia, guaranteed. Fox Sports Radio 1400 traffic.
Traffic tie-ups include I-20 eastbound near the Alpine Road exit. Also an accident, 2-notch at Spears Creek Church Road. The 103.5 FM WVOC traffic tip line is open at 343-1055.
This report is brought to you by Aussie.com.
Get smarter every day at Aussie.com. Try a new news site that tells you about the most interesting people, places, and ideas. Discover the next Obama, or maybe the next LeBron James. Try OZY.com right now. Aussie. It's like a latte for your mind. Get some.
For the past 2 months, our homes have been, well, lived in. More than ever before. Kitchens have become science labs, sofas have become jungle gyms, and carpet has become the official canvas of quarantine. Restore your home back to its original glory with the help of Zero Res Carpet and Air Duct Cleaning. Right now, get 3 rooms of carpet clean for only $119 and a complimentary cleaning and disinfecting of common touch surfaces. Call 803-262-4020 or schedule your cleaning online at ZeroResColumbia.com.
Tiger fans, look no further than the Tiger Sports Shop in Clemson for all your game day needs. Since 1974, they've brought you everything Clemson for the Clemson fan. With quality brands such as Nike, Antigua, Cutter & Buck, and Champion, plus many more. From hats to t-shirts to tailgate, the Tiger Sports Shop has all the Clemson gear a true Tiger fan needs. With 2 convenient game day locations in Tigertown, shop where I shop at Dr. I.M. Ibrahim's Tiger Sports Shop. They fuel the passion of Tiger fans everywhere. Check them out online, tigersports.com.
Sensory sensitivity, repetitious behavior, lack of eye contact. You can see signs of autism in children as young as 18 months. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her.
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge.
Got to get this all straightened out. Keep a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! It's now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend.
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
You're bringing your daughter to her favorite pop star's concert. Do you A, wear earplugs?
Isn't this fun, Dad?
I'll have a soft pretzel.
B, remember the moment with matching concert t-shirts.
That's going to be $180. Or we can just take a photo.
C, show her how you used to do concerts.
We're going crowd surfing.
I can't. It's too heavy. Oh my God. Ah.
Or D, just roll with it.
Justin! OMG! He just looked. I love you, Justin! I love you!
When it comes to parenting, there are no perfect answers. But that's okay, because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Looking for South Carolina's favorite country? You'll find it at 97.5 WCOS.
It is a Monday afternoon on the show that shakes the Southland. A rainy Monday here in the Midlands of South Carolina as the rains have moved in and maybe settling in for some time. I am, it's so funny because the lighting in studio, it never seems this bright because it's typically not that dark outside, but it is getting a little bit dark here. And so I look at a flashlight in my face like we're doing the Blair Witch Project or something. Appreciate William Qualkenbush. He's on Twitter at Qualt Talking again in hour 1. Mike Mooneyham joined the program. He's on Twitter at Mike Mooneyham. Your website, ClemsonSportsTalk.com. That's Clemson news, notes, information, and more 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've been digging in the archives. That's been fun. Aaron Kelly this past weekend. We had interviews with Danny Ford. We got Perry Tuttle coming up. I mean, we're trying to hit them so much so. Did we put out the Perry Tuttle already? I can't even keep up. I'm just going to be honest here. We put out so much stuff during the COVID-19 from the standpoint of old school stuff from the archives. No, we have not done the Perry Tuttle. We've done James Davis, Danny Ford, and Aaron Kelly. Must have the Perry Tuttle in the coffers. But I can't even keep up. Like some people say, man, what are you guys talking about? And a lot of people are regurgitating old news and old interviews in terms of things that went down this past season. But I was like, you know what? We got a whole library. We've got a whole library of interviews from the past that we've done that have never been published outside of being maybe in the podcast edition of Clemson Sports Talk. Why not let them out to our premium subscribers over on our website? Just $63.17 for an entire year. That's 18 cents a day. That's right, $63.17. That's the old famous 2003 score between Clemson and South Carolina in Williams-Brice Stadium, a night I'll never forget. I've been in Williams-Brice Stadium for some unbelievable Clemson football games against South Carolina. I was there in 1989, 45-0, the final score there. I was 12 years old. Man, that was just a beat down of epic proportion. And then 2003, 14 years later, I'm in there with my wife. We were just dating then, but Carolina fans spilling out of Williams-Brice Stadium so quickly. I mean, it was crazy. And we love the Gamecocks that peek over the fence and hang out with us and have a good time talking about college sports. But when I think back to all those games, I mean, really, since I started school at Clemson, so I was at the 1989 game in Williams-Brice Stadium. I was not at the 91 or the 93. I was at the 95. I was at the 97. I missed, I believe, the 99 game, but then I've been there from 01 forward. 01, 03, 05, 07, 09, 11, 13, 15, 17, and 19. I've been there for every one of them in Williams-Brice Stadium, and I got to admit, that game in their stadium in South Carolina's backyard, there are a lot of people that will say, I don't want to go to that game. I can't stand Gamecock fans. I hate being in that venue. There is not a more fun regular season game for me than going into South Carolina's backyard. Honestly, I love being able to go around to the tailgates of friends who I never get to see and tailgate with. And that's no offense to the Tiger fans I get to see every week in Clemson. But I get to go see people that I know and have relationships with, but never get to experience football in that, you know what I mean, in that magnitude. You also get to be the enemy. You get to be the enemy in their territory. There's something special to that. And, you know, with the way Clemson's been playing recently, it's also been something special to be one of the top 5 teams in the country when you've come into that game, I believe, in 15, 17, and 19. Like, you can talk to me to death about how much you dislike, or I don't like to use the word hate, but you can use it if you want to. Like, you hate South Carolina fans. I love that rivalry. I love the matchup. I like rolling in there. You don't always win, but I like that. And what makes that's the fans, the enemies, the people that are hating on you. That's what I always loved about those game days, is that when I go to Wake Forest, when I go to Florida State, when I go to NC State, I mean, you go around the horn of all the programs that Clemson plays in conference, or when we've gone down to cover Clemson at Auburn. Yeah, you're the enemy. You're the rival. You're the opponent that day. But it's a different feeling when you are in your number one rival's backyard. And that, for me, is something that gets you going, man. And football minus fans, sports minus fans. One thing you can't say about me is that I've been in here for 50 some odd days on the show saying, we got to get sports back. We got to get sports back. I'm dying without sports. I feel like I'm thriving. I feel like the topics of conversation, those things have really been fun for me. A change of pace, doing more interviews. Here's the thing. I can be critical of venues without fans and not enjoying it because I haven't been somebody that said, we got to have sports no matter what. Put me back in the arena. I haven't been that guy. I want sports with fans. Could I do college football with 15,000? Probably. You'd get some cheering at least. You'd get some noise. I can't really, I tried it this weekend. Like I said, I watched soccer. I watched some of the golf. I watched NASCAR. And even NASCAR, that was kind of the one that turned me. That's the one that really made me go, yeah, I don't think this is going to be great. Because it's not even a sport where you can really hear the fans. It was cool to hear the cars going, that was awesome. But when there's nobody in the crowd, when there's no reactions to anything that happens. It's just sanitized. And it wasn't very fun. And what makes that game in Williams-Brice Stadium great is being as can we stay with the wrestling theme here? As Scott Hall would say, being the bad guy. That's what's fun. And that's what I love about having fans there. It's the rivalry. It's the passion. We didn't have that this weekend.
Training is a fun, accountable way to get in shape. I'm Coach Stewart of Dynamic Health and Fitness. Come train with one of our special groups today. We will focus on giving you the support you need to get in shape. We use the Dynamic Mob, featuring intervals of cardio, functional training, and strength training to change your lifestyle to make you healthy. Get started today at any of our locations in Lexington or West Columbia, or call 803-408-4060 or online at dynamichealthclub.com.
If there's one thing the class of 2020 has learned, it's to expect the unexpected. So, to help them on their journey, iHeartRadio is launching Commencement, a new podcast featuring speeches from the biggest names. Commencement is in partnership with the 2020 Census, which gives you the opportunity to help shape the future of our country for the next 10 years. Complete the census at 2020census.gov. Then, listen to iHeartRadio's new podcast, Commencement. Speeches are out now on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Northern Tool and Equipment is here to help. Whether you're cleaning, building, fixing, cutting, mowing, or growing, Northern Tool has the right tool for the job. Our stores are open and cleaning around the clock. Contactless curbside pickup is available when you order on northerntool.com. That's northerntool.com. Remember, whether you're cleaning, building, fixing, cutting, mowing, or growing, Northern Tool has the right tool for the job. Northern Tool and Equipment. Quality tools for serious work. northerntool.com.
Live from the $1,500 instant rebate AAA Heating and Air Weather Center.
Thunderstorms tonight, about an 80% chance, low in the upper 60s. Tomorrow, expect rain, high in the low 80s. In the 103.5 FM WVOC Weather Center, I'm Rob Sanders.
This report is sponsored by Unbound.org. Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at Unbound.org.
The class of 2020 had a piece of their journey taken, so iHeartRadio, along with some of the most influential voices in the world, are giving it back the best way we can. Commencement, the podcast, will host an unprecedented amount of inspirational speeches that we can all use right now. General Stanley McChrystal.
Accept that this crisis sucks. It does. But finding a sense of purpose is how we all emerge stronger.
And many, many more. Commencement, the podcast, ready for you now on the free iHeartRadio app.
When I was little, I didn't talk for a long time. I liked things to always be the same. Anything new or different would scare and upset me. I was very sensitive to lights and sounds. It was almost like I had bigger eyes and ears than everyone else. So I built secret hiding places where nothing could get in. I didn't like looking people in the eye. It made me feel uncomfortable. I'd throw big tantrums over little things like when my socks didn't match. Sometimes I'd do the same things over and over. Until one day, I found out I had autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I learned how to live with it better.
You can see signs of autism in children as young as 18 months. Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique, but you are not alone. MAD is here to help. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org. That's MADD.org.
It's sports radio done only the way Fox can do it.
There's always something to talk about. There's always controversy.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio 1400.
Clemson Sports Talk on a Monday. Lawton Swan, Double O checking into the program, says, stop crying, Swanee. Sports without fans, better than no football at all, please. He says, you better take a pill because I bet more people want it than don't. I think more people want it. It just not. It just doesn't have that same punch. Doesn't have that same punch. I mean, it's like the show that shakes the Southland without the listeners. It just doesn't have that same punch. That's why I love when you guys call and text and participate. He says, play an old interview or something. Stop whining. You sound like a spoiled, rotten kid. Don't make me call the show. I hear you, big guy. Appreciate you. So back to Furman's situation, eliminating baseball effective immediately. I was looking through some of the information on that front, and there's a couple of things that stand out. Their goal is to eliminate the total number of athletic scholarships by 45 over the next 5 years, and those reductions will be spread across sports. The other thing that I didn't even think about when we were looking or when we were diving into it from that standpoint, is the fact that there are a couple of former Clemson Tigers who are a part of the baseball program in terms of the coaching staff. And so, I mentioned the kids, and I have no idea what those kids will do from that standpoint. But, if you are a Clemson Tiger baseball fan or somebody who supports the Clemson Tiger baseball program, today was a sad day for you as well, because a couple of former Tigers lost their opportunity over at Furman, and it is disappointing. Taylor Harbin was one of the assistant coaches over there. Andrew Cox was one of the assistant coaches over at Furman, and Clemson baseball tweeted a heart and then a heartbroken emoji about 35 minutes ago. We retweeted that over on Twitter at Clemson Sports. It is. It's tough, and I don't think anybody's got great answers. And certainly if you are a player or a coach involved in baseball or men's lacrosse, today is gut-wrenching. The official release from Furman says, in an effort to address the unprecedented financial impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, Furman University on Monday announced it would cut the salaries of the president and senior administrators, implement furloughs and budget reductions, and discontinue the baseball and men's lacrosse programs. Furman University President Elizabeth Davis said, as we all know from our shared experience, the COVID-19 pandemic has thrust us into a global crisis we could not have imagined 6 months ago. We are taking these steps to ensure that our university can thrive and continue to carry out its academic mission at the highest level of quality and engagement. I have seen some other programs, by the way, some other schools putting in plans in place to make sure that students get back on campus in the fall. Some, such as, say, Notre Dame and even South Carolina, have put out structures in place that will end the on-campus portion of the year at Thanksgiving break, essentially, allowing students to be home for what would be considered the majority of the flu and virus season, hoping to minimize the effects of COVID-19 during what would be deemed by the weather conditions the time of the year where the spread and the opportunity to be infected by it could be higher. So you do see that coming down the line. Again, it is a terrible, terrible deal with Furman. And they say Furman will honor the scholarships of current and incoming student athletes in baseball and men's lacrosse for the remainder of their undergraduate academic careers at Furman and assist them with transferring to another institution if they decide to do so. So these players can stay at the school. They'll still get their scholarship money. And in baseball, you got to remember, what is it, like 17 and a half scholarships sliced up amongst the whole team. So a lot of these guys will probably leave, I would assume, to either go play somewhere else, try to catch on somewhere else, or just to save them their family some money because of how expensive it is to go to Furman in the first place. Now, if you were going to Furman to play on a baseball scholarship, because it wasn't a whole lot of your your financial obligations, you probably were doing okay anyway. You probably had academic scholarships anyway, things of that nature. But this will open up the door for some of these guys to move on and play somewhere else. And who's to say that some of these guys don't end up in Clemson? Some of them don't end up at South Carolina or other programs around the state. And again, at what point, if you are another school, small, large, etc., at what point do you find yourself concerned that the sport you play, the sport you love, or the sport that you support may really have just been a luxury for your athletic department and not something they really needed? And they were losing money on it, and it's become a bottom line deal. I don't say this with the expectations that tons and tons of programs are going to fold up, but they could. Furman had been playing baseball since 1896. 125 years, and they closed it up. Unprecedented times indeed. And I know that Furman fans are probably heartbroken. And it will be unique to see if there is something done on that front to try to save and resurrect this program as well. It wouldn't be the first time that people have pulled together to fix an issue. This would be a substantial financial issue to try to fix, though. That's for sure. Final segment on the flip side. We'll put a bow on the show next.
iHeart Radio Earth is here with little tips for a healthier planet. You're staying home, which means you're using your grocery delivery app more than ever. But did you know that plastic grocery bags can end up in our oceans, waterways, and Great Lakes? So make sure you recycle them when possible. Brought to you by iHeart Radio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips on smarter, sustainable living, or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth.
For 28 years, the professional staff of the Hobbs Group and Hobbs Group Advisors has been dedicated to helping others achieve their financial goals by delivering quality, objective financial and accounting solutions to a diverse client base of individuals and businesses all over South Carolina. We offer tax and audit services, bookkeeping, payroll, litigation support, employee benefits, personal financial planning, investment management, and insurance services. Please call us at 803-799-0555 or visit our website, hobbscpa.com, to learn more about our people and services.
When a community grows, its hospital should grow too. And that's just what we're doing at Lexington Medical Center. We recently launched the largest hospital expansion project in South Carolina history. Our new 10-story patient tower will help us take better care of patients, including the tiniest infants who need special attention. It will also make room for the growing number of patients who need surgery and intensive care. At Lexington Medical Center, our mission to serve our community never wavers. We're here when you need us today, and we'll be there when you need us tomorrow.
Ever had that small crack in your windshield that turned into a very large crack overnight? Hi, I'm Ray.
And I'm Mary Ann, and we're with Absolute Glass.
We are your only local high-end auto glass specialist in the Midlands, used by high-end car dealerships, and we absolutely have you covered.
Whether it's a small or big crack, you can be confident in our certified technicians to get the job done right the first time.
Visit AbsoluteGlassInc.com for a quote or call 951-7200.
That's AbsoluteGlassInc.com or 951-7200.
Dave, what are you doing?
Just sending a gift to Dave 2037.
Who?
Me in the future. I save a little money from every paycheck as a gift to Dave 2037, so he can spend it on things like anti-gravity boots or a hologram Doberman, something cool like that. I think Dave 2037 deserves it. He worked hard. What are you getting Steve 2037?
I guess I was thinking Steve 2037 would just fend for himself.
Well, all right, but don't expect to be borrowing my anti-gravity boots.
You want to have money in your future? You got to start saving now. Putting some money from every paycheck into a savings account or contributing to your 401k can make a big difference later. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1,000,000. For free ideas and easy ways to save, go to feedthepig.org. That's feedthepig.org.
Hey, let's just hope Steve 2037 doesn't get his hands on a cold time machine, because he is going to come back here and knock some sense into you.
This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Ever think of light bulbs as being cool? They are if you choose energy-efficient bulbs and fixtures that have earned the government's Energy Star label. They're so hot, they're cool. Because they burn cool and last up to 10 times longer, you save money and oodles of energy. Change a light, help the environment, save some green. The solution is as close as your nearest lamp socket. Brighten your environmental future. From the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency.
Major key alert! Don't ever play yourself. Life is like school. You will be tested, so pass it.
Learn the real major keys to getting to college at GetSchooled.com.
Stay focused. Now that's a major key alert.
Brought to you by Get Schooled and the Ad Council.
Fox Sports Radio 1400. Online at foxsportsradio1400.com. On your phone with the iHeart Radio app. And on hundreds of devices like Alexa, Google Home, Xbox, and Sonos. An iHeart Radio station.
What have you done for me lately? It's a fair question. Just don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Don't forget history. Lucky for us at Clemson, the answer to the questions, what have you done for me lately, and what have you done always, are the same. We win.
Final segment on a Friday. Lawton Swan, thank you to Mike Mooneyham. Thank you to William Qualkenbush. Thank you to everybody out there for being a part of the show and helping us get through it again. We feel bad for those guys at Furman. We had a lot of other stuff I wanted to dive into today, but we'll roll it over. Again, I'm still working my way through the Last Dance documentary of Michael Jordan, the Chicago Bulls 1998 run. I got through, I think I'm heading into episode 7, maybe episode 6. It's good. I was telling somebody the other day they hadn't watched any of it. They said, how would you rate it? I think it's good, not great. I think that because people are hungry for something, they're probably valuing it a little bit more than I think it really is worth in terms of, how is it the best documentary of, sports franchise I've ever seen? No, I've seen better 30 for 30s. I've seen better SEC stories. It's good. Gives you a lot of juice. Gives you 10 hours of stuff to react to. But to me, good, not great. Good, not great. You can binge watch apparently all 10 episodes on ESPN, according to what I see here on their webpage. Nonetheless, whether it was golf this weekend, whether it was soccer this weekend, whether it was NASCAR this weekend, I think that we are at least taking some steps back to a level of normalcy because we are getting sports. Will we continue to get sports? I think that's still very much up in the air. I really believe that. I think that much like when we were shutting down, human beings I think we have this innate quality in us that we want to do our best to make a difference, right? I think for the most part, the majority of people want to do what they can to help out. And if that means that you get quarantined for a little while to mitigate the flatten the curve, you do that. And I think we did that. I think that there are obviously people itching to get out and go, and you're perfectly allowed to go out and go depending on what the regulations are in place in your area, because you could be listening anywhere, right? Not necessarily just in the state of South Carolina, but people are going to restaurants, social distancing still being practiced. And I think, we're probably about a week to maybe 2 weeks, depending on the data, out from a good determination of what things are going to look like. And I think that's okay. I don't know if the results from 1 week out are actually enough to be able to say, yep, this is a big difference or not. I hope things continue to go well. I hope that we will find ourselves preparing for a college football season sooner rather than later. Tomorrow on the program, we'll dive into some of how those scenarios could play out and really what your thoughts would be on how would you feel if some teams played 12 games and other teams played 10? And that's a real possibility. Could you have a legitimate national championship or a legitimate college football playoff with unequal schedules, which could happen? And maybe, is it legitimate if there is a whole conference like the Pac-12 not involved? I mean, those are things that people who are much higher up in sports than I have to, and have been, I think, not have to start talking about, but have been talking about and trying to figure out. Because as much as I don't like sports without people, I understand that might be the reality that we deal with, that we have to live with. And so from that standpoint, as these things continue to move forward and we get more data and more evidence, yay or nay, versus whether or not we're going to do this thing in 2020 with football, I think that evidence and data is going to come very soon. I mean, today is May the 18th. I know it's already affected camps, evaluations. Speaking of which, Kyrie G, who was down to Clemson, and LSU picked LSU earlier today about 12:30. We got some recruiting notes over on ClemsonSportsTalk.com. Not a huge miss from the Clemson Tigers standpoint because they've got their eyeballs in some other areas as well. But he was a kid that a lot of people thought was going to end up at Clemson several months ago. Nonetheless, I do believe, May 18th, that I'm going to say June 1. I'm just going to mark that date and hold firm on it. June 1 is really the day where we're going to know a lot more about what is coming in September. I hope that it's good news. But if it isn't, one thing I think we've all learned over the past 50 some odd, nearly 60 days is that we can get through this together. And I'll be here with you along for the ride, the long haul, if you will. Again, the website, ClemsonSportsTalk.com, on Twitter, @ClemsonSports. We got to get out of here. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, as always, y'all take care now, and go Tigers! Go Tigers!
Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan on Columbia's home for sports, Fox Sports Radio 1400. Now, Columbia's most dependable traffic, sponsored by Pope Davis Tire and Automotive.